Secrets have a way of coming to light at the worst possible moment. Imagine a crowded baby shower filled with pink and blue balloons, tables overflowing with cupcakes, and a room full of guests snapping photos of a glowing mother-to-be. But then shouting erupts near the gift table. You see a furious husband confronting his very pregnant wife, who shouldn't even be there. In the blink of an eye, he pushes her backward, sending everyone into shocked silence. That's just the beginning. Little does he know when they all meet again in court, the next week 2 new lives, and one devastating truth will redefine everything. Carter Dawson and Alicia Marshall met the way so many modern couples do at a networking event in downtown Los Angeles. Alicia worked in interior design, a field that allowed her to merge her creative impulses with a savvy business mind. Carter was fresh out of law school and raring to climb the legal ladder in his father's boutique law firm. They were both young, optimistic, and so certain that love would conquer all. When they first locked eyes over a tray of hors d'oeuvres, conversation flowed effortlessly. Alicia felt a spark of excitement that she hadn't felt in a long time. Carter, with his quick wit and confident posture, seemed to fill a void she didn't even know she had. The two began dating, and within 6 months, they were practically inseparable. For her, Carter was a man who took charge, but balanced it with enough charm to make it feel romantic. For him, Alicia was the kind of woman who lit up a room. She had a buoyant spirit and a fierce loyalty he found irresistible. It didn't take long for them to have the talk about marriage, children, and building a life together. Yet from the start, there were subtle warning signs. Carter was ambitious, so ambitious that at times he neglected Alicia's emotional needs in favor of professional goals. He'd stay late at the office, leaving her alone in their stylish downtown apartment. She would text him good-night messages that often went unread until morning. He justified it by saying, "I'm working for our future," and Alicia, enamored and hopeful, believed him. They got married in a lavish ceremony, attended by Los Angeles' social elite. Friends flew in from all over the country. Even Lucy Walters, an old friend of Alicia's from her hometown in Ohio, made the trip to celebrate the union. Lucy was the kind of friend who kept Alicia grounded, always ready with a heart-warming reminder that love should never feel lonely, even in marriage. Lucy also noticed Carter's occasional aloofness, but she put it down to the stress of planning a wedding and adjusting to newlywed life. Still, Alicia would lie awake at night, listening to Carter's gentle snoring, wondering if they were moving too fast. But love won out, or at least it felt that way. When Alicia discovered she was pregnant, almost a year into their marriage, she took it as a sign that everything was falling into place. In truth, that very moment signaled the unraveling of her fairy tale. Carter's reaction to the pregnancy news was subdued. He smiled, gave her a hug, but Alicia sensed something missing. True excitement, perhaps. "This is great news," he had said, forcing a grin. "We'll start our family, and everything will be perfect." But as the months passed, Alicia was left to attend prenatal classes alone, while Carter claimed he had to work late. He would mutter things like, "I have court cases, Alicia. I can't just skip them." She reasoned that was the price of being married to an up-and-coming lawyer. Meanwhile, Lucy Walters called often, checking in from Ohio. Every time Lucy asked, "Is Carter there with you?" Alicia's pause on the phone spoke volumes. Little did Alicia know that her frequent loneliness wasn't just because Carter was working. He was also finding solace in someone else's arms, a charming young paralegal named Bianca Reed. Bianca Reed entered Carter's life just as Alicia's belly began to show. She was new at the firm, recommended by an old family friend of Carter's father. She had a bright smile, enviable curves, and a natural confidence in the office that made heads turn. She wasn't shy about her ambition to become a lawyer someday. But for now, she was content racking up experience and building her own network. The first time Bianca and Carter worked together, it was late, the office nearly empty, and Carter was reviewing a crucial piece of litigation. Bianca volunteered to stay and help organize the files. He noticed how meticulously she labeled them, how she seemed to anticipate exactly what he needed before he spoke. A simple conversation about a legal brief quickly spiraled into banter about travel hobbies and restaurant recommendations. It started innocently enough. Carter found himself laughing more in Bianca's presence than he had in months. She reminded him of who he had been before the pressures of married life, fatherhood-to-be, and unrelenting professional expectations weighed on him. Her laughter was contagious, and her flirtations were subtle but undeniable. Within a few weeks, Carter was staying late, even when he didn't have important work. He and Bianca would share takeout meals in the break room. They'd confide in each other about family histories, petty insecurities, and workplace dramas. When Alicia texted him, "Are you on your way home?" Carter often left the messages unanswered. He told himself it was harmless, just a little escapism. But deep down, he knew he was crossing lines. Bianca was aware of Carter's marriage, but she found herself drawn to his power, his poise, and the unspoken vulnerability he let slip when he thought no one was looking. She was younger, definitely more carefree, and her optimism about the future was something Carter craved. So their friendship leapt toward intimacy. Nights at the office turned into private dinners in discreet corners of the city, which turned into stolen weekends under the pretense of business trips. Friends at the law firm whispered about the suspicious closeness between Carter and Bianca. "He's a married man," said one junior associate. He should be ashamed. But nobody dared confront the boss's son. Rumors, however, have a way of circling back, and eventually Alicia heard faint murmurs from Lucy, who heard it through a friend living in LA. Alicia confronted Carter several times, but each time he brushed it off. "Bianca's just a co-worker, Alicia. I'm busy. Don't let your hormones get the best of you." With every denial, Alicia's unease grew. She was pregnant, feeling emotionally fragile, and Carter was slipping further away, increasingly living in Bianca's orbit. Alicia tried her best to focus on her pregnancy doctor's appointments, vitamins, reading, parenting books. Yet she couldn't shake a looming dread that her marriage was in jeopardy. She was right. Alicia's growing suspicion fueled her determination to find proof. One afternoon, while Carter was in the shower, she took a deep breath and opened his phone. They had always respected each other's privacy. Alicia believed trust was paramount in any marriage, but desperation drove her to break this rule. His passcode was his birthday, a sign of how complacent he'd become about hiding secrets. She scrolled through his messages and found exactly what she feared. Text after text between Carter and Bianca told the story of an affair with unguarded explicitness. "I can't stop thinking about last night," Bianca wrote. "I love the way you smell," Carter replied. Alicia's hands trembled as she read messages, scheduling romantic dinners and booking hotel rooms. Her heart pounded so violently that she worried she might faint. She felt her unborn baby move inside her, an unsettling reminder of the life she carried, a child whose father was already entangled with another woman. When Carter emerged from the shower, Alicia confronted him. Tears were streaming down her face. Her voice quivered as she hurled the evidence in his face. For a moment, he was struck dumb. Then came the excuses, Alicia. "It's not what you think. It just happened. I was lonely. I'm under a lot of stress." At that moment, Alicia couldn't handle his excuses. She felt a physical ache in her chest, and the baby kicked again, as if to demand better from a father who was clearly betraying them both. She stormed out of the bathroom, slammed the door, and spent the night in the guest bedroom crying until her eyes felt raw. The following morning, Alicia woke up to Carter's frantic knocking on the guest room door. She braced herself for the usual sweet talk or hollow apology. But what she got was more of the same half-hearted remorse, pledges to change empty words about how he'd never do it again. Alicia wanted to believe him. She still loved him. But the damage was done. Something broke in her that night, and she wasn't sure how to piece it back together. Lucy, always the loyal friend, flew to LA the next week to offer Alicia emotional support. Over cups of herbal tea, Lucy pressed Alicia about her options. "Are you leaving him? Are you staying? You need to think of your baby. You can't keep living like this." Alicia bit her lip, tears threatening again. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I'm scared to raise this baby alone, but he's driving me insane." Days turned into weeks. Carter promised counseling, offered to cut ties with Bianca. He acted repentant, but Alicia discovered more texts showing that nothing had changed. Each betrayal hollowed Alicia out. She told Carter to leave, but he refused, insisting that he could fix this. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting, and Alicia felt her own health suffering. Yet the final straw hadn't arrived until Alicia found out about the baby shower. One morning, Alicia received a call from an unrecognized number. When she picked up, the voice on the line was that of Bianca's sister, Carmen Reed, who had always looked out for her younger sibling, sometimes with a misguided sense of loyalty. Carmen sounded hesitant, almost guilty. "Alicia, I'm sorry to bother you," she said awkwardly, "but I think you should know something. Bianca is pregnant." Pregnant. The word echoed in Alicia's mind like a cannon shot. The full implications rattled her. Carter's mistress pregnant. She clutched her stomach protectively, her own baby nearly 6 months along. "I'm calling because Bianca wants Carter to attend her baby shower," Carmen continued. "She's mailed invitations to family and close friends and, well, I don't think you'd appreciate it, but she asked me to confirm. She said Carter promised to come." Alicia's emotions spun out of control. At first she fell silent, tears burning her eyes. Then she began to chuckle, a bitter, humorless sound. The situation was so absurd, it almost felt like a twisted joke. Carter fathering 2 babies at once, one in his marriage, one in an affair. Carmen cleared her throat. "Look, Alicia, I'm not trying to hurt you, but I think you should know what's going on. I don't approve of what Bianca has done. But she's my sister, and I'm in a tough spot." Alicia exhaled, tried to calm her shaking hands. "Thank you for calling," she managed, then ended the conversation. As she stared at her phone, Alicia's anger crystallized into determination. She wasn't going to let Carter slink out of the house with some lie about a business meeting. If he was going to brazenly attend his mistress's baby shower, he would have to face her. And she decided then and there that she would attend 2 uninvited. Bianca's baby shower was held at a charming countryside venue in the hills above Los Angeles, an elegant rustic barn with sweeping views of vineyards and rolling fields. The decorations were a tasteful blend of soft pastel balloons with lavish floral arrangements and vintage furniture. Through the giant barn doors, you could see tables laden with gourmet pastries and meticulously wrapped gifts. It was the kind of affair that Instagram influencers would pay good money to feature. Alicia arrived wearing a loose-fitting but elegant dress that draped over her pregnant belly. She had told no one she was coming, not even Lucy. She needed to do this alone to see with her own eyes just how far the betrayal extended. Her heart raced as she made her way up the gravel path. She spotted Carter's car in the makeshift parking lot, her nerves twisting into knots. She swallowed hard, praying that her resolve wouldn't shatter. Music played inside a soft, cheery tune that might have felt comforting under other circumstances. The guests were mostly Bianca's family and friends, plus a few co-workers from the law firm. Alicia recognized a few familiar faces associates who worked under Carter, smirking at her presence. A few gasped, but nobody dared to stop her. Then she saw Carter and Bianca near the front, laughing about something as they greeted a guest. Bianca looked radiant in a flowing, peach-colored dress that showcased her belly. Carter's hand rested on the small of Bianca's back the same way he used to touch Alicia when they were dating. Alicia felt a visceral sting, as though her heart was being crushed in a vice. Initially, Carter didn't notice Alicia. He was preoccupied with introducing Bianca to a senior partner from the firm. But once he turned around, their eyes locked. For a split second, horror flickered across Carter's face. He rushed toward Alicia, trying to usher her out before she made a scene. "What are you doing here?" he hissed under his breath, his voice tinged with panic. "Please, you shouldn't be here." Before Alicia could respond, Bianca sauntered over, curiosity morphing into alarm as she realized who had shown up. "You have a lot of nerve," she said to Alicia, though she tried to maintain a veneer of grace in front of her guests. Then, in a softer voice, dripping with condescension, "Maybe we can talk. Outside." Alicia felt a lifetime of anger and betrayal welling inside her. She glanced around and saw the crowd gawking. She spoke in a steady voice that shocked even herself. "Why don't we talk right here? After all, you invited the father of my child. I assume you don't mind having me around, too." A hush settled over the guests. Some of Bianca's relatives shot each other worried glances. Carmen Reed stood in a corner, pale with guilt. The tension was electric. Carter tried again to corral Alicia by the arm, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me," she snarled. "I came to see exactly what I've suspected all along. You've been lying to me for months. Carter, and here you are, celebrating a baby you're having with another woman." Bianca, for her part, looked mortified. She tried to salvage the event by signaling the DJ to raise the music, but it was too late. The hush among the guests had turned into a collective recoil nobody wanted to step in. It was a train wreck in slow motion. Finally, Carter's temper snapped. "You're making a scene," he shouted, voice echoing across the barn. He reached for Alicia's arm again, more forcefully this time, as if to drag her outside and end this spectacle. Alicia's body tensed, and she tried to free herself. "Let go of me." Then, in a moment that would replay in Alicia's nightmares for weeks to come, Carter shoved her. Not just a nudge, he pushed her away with enough force that she stumbled backward, nearly colliding with a table of pastel-frosted cupcakes. A collective gasp tore through the onlookers. Some guests rushed forward to help Alicia regain her balance, but the damage was done. She felt the sharp pain in her back from the abrupt movement. Tears of shock and fury welled in her eyes. She'd never thought Carter would harm her physically, especially not while she was pregnant. Carter's eyes widened, as though realizing the weight of what he had done. Alicia steadied herself, both hands protectively on her belly, fighting back tears. I didn't mean," Carter stammered, but the words died in his throat. Bianca stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort Alicia or side with Carter. The crowd erupted in hushed conversations and speculation. Carmen Reed finally rushed to Alicia's side, but Alicia waved her away. She felt humiliated, furious, and heartbreakingly alone. "Stay away from me," Alicia managed, her voice trembling. Then she turned and stormed out of the barn, leaving stunned guests and a wave of uneasy murmurs behind her. She didn't look back. She couldn't bear to face the man who had just shattered her last shred of trust. Word of the scandal at the baby shower spread quickly. A few of Bianca's friends, outraged by what they witnessed, posted cryptic messages on social media. Some men have zero shame. Pregnancy. Drama. Unbelievable. Within hours, Lucy Walters in Ohio found out what happened and called Alicia in tears, begging her to press charges or at least file a restraining order. Alicia refused to answer calls from everyone, at first overwhelmed by the magnitude of the betrayal. But eventually, Alicia confided in Lucy, describing the humiliating moment when Carter shoved her. "I'm fine, physically," she said, her voice cracking. "The baby's fine. I went to the doctor just to be sure." Lucy breathed a sigh of relief, but remained livid at Carter's behavior. "You deserve better," Lucy kept repeating. "He's not the man you married." Meanwhile, Carter tried to do damage control. He texted Alicia incessantly. "Alicia, I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. I lost my temper. You know I'd never hurt you or the baby. Please don't leave me, we can work this out." Alicia refused to respond. She felt numb, empty, and unable to process that the man she once adored could harm her. She spent her days curled up on the sofa, replaying the moment in her mind. She scheduled sessions with a therapist to untangle her conflicting emotions: anger, sadness, fear. Carter's parents got wind of the altercation too. His mother, Gloria Dawson, was horrified. She reached out to Alicia, begging her not to involve the police and promising that Carter's father would ensure Alicia was taken care of financially. It was a classic damage control move, and Alicia felt insulted by the implicit bribe. She wanted accountability, not hush money. Then, as if the situation weren't complicated enough, Alicia received a phone call from an unexpected source. Bianca. Her voice was trembling and apologetic. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I never expected Carter to react that way," Bianca said. "This is my baby shower, and it turned into a nightmare. I didn't want to hurt you like that." Alicia listened in stunned silence. Could Bianca actually be apologizing? Or was she simply trying to play innocent? Bianca continued, "I'm not some monster, Alicia. Carter told me your marriage was essentially over, that you were just roommates. I believed him. I'm not justifying my actions, but I need you to know I wasn't trying to ruin your life. I'm pregnant too, and I want what's best for my child." Alicia felt fury surging in her again, but she forced herself to remain calm. "If you cared about what's best for your child," she said quietly, "you would have realized that fathering 2 babies at once is not exactly stable. And if you believed Carter when he said our marriage was over, you were naive. Or maybe you just didn't care." Bianca let out a shaky breath. "I can't change what happened, but I want you to know I'm leaving Los Angeles. I'm moving back with my family in San Diego. This scandal is too big for me to handle here. I don't want my baby to be born into this mess." Surprisingly, Alicia felt a faint sense of relief. At least Bianca was removing herself from Carter's direct orbit. But the damage was done, and Alicia had to figure out her own life. "I appreciate the apology," she said flatly, ending the call. She doubted she'd ever speak to Bianca again. Just as Alicia was gearing up to distance herself from Carter. Permanently, she received an unexpected notice in the mail, a summons for a family court hearing. Confused, she immediately called Lucy, who listened in disbelief. The summons stated that Carter was petitioning for a hearing to discuss custody and visitation rights of both unborn children. "It's insane," Alicia fumed, pacing her living room. "He physically harmed me, and now he has the nerve to demand a hearing about custody before the baby is even born." Lucy was livid on Alicia's behalf. "He's probably doing preemptive damage control. He knows you might file domestic violence charges or limit his access to the baby once it's born. He's trying to paint you as the emotional one so he can hold on to some parental rights." That night, Alicia wrestled with insomnia. She felt torn. On one hand, she didn't want to deprive her child of a father if Carter could somehow redeem himself. On the other, she wanted to protect her baby from a man who had physically harmed her while pregnant. Ironically, Carter's father, Harold Dawson, was a prominent lawyer in family law. He reached out, offering to mediate, but Alicia refused. She suspected the hearing was a tactic orchestrated by the Dawson family to keep everything under their control. Feeling cornered, Alicia hired her own attorney, a reputable woman named Teresa Grant, who had built a career advocating for domestic abuse survivors. Teresa was enraged when she heard Alicia's story. "We can countersue for a protective order," she said. "We can also document everything that happened at the baby shower." Alicia was hesitant. "I don't want an ugly court battle," she said softly, hand on her belly. "I just want to live in peace." Teresa placed a gentle hand on Alicia's shoulder. "Sometimes the only way to get peace is to fight for it." So Alicia steeled herself for the legal confrontation looming. The hearing was set for the following week, a date that made Alicia's heart pound every time she thought about it. She knew she'd have to see Carter in court, face the paternal claims he was making, and relive the trauma of the baby shower scene. She wasn't sure she had the emotional stamina, but Lucy encouraged her. "You can do this," Lucy said. "You have to do this for you and your baby." What Alicia didn't know was that fate was about to add an even bigger twist to the drama, two tiny new arrivals who would upend the entire narrative in a way no one could have predicted. In the days leading up to the court hearing, Alicia tried to keep her stress levels down for the baby's sake. She practiced mindfulness exercises, took gentle walks, and tried to eat nutrient-rich foods. The tension, however, was inescapable. Meanwhile, Lucy, who was still in Ohio, called almost daily. Each time she pressed Alicia to stay strong. Don't forget, Lucy reminded her, Carter will try to manipulate the situation. Show the judge you're prepared. Focus on the facts, his affair, his violence, your willingness to co-parent if he respects boundaries. The morning of the hearing arrived. Alicia dressed in a simple black maternity dress and sat in Teresa Grant's office, reviewing last-minute details. Her nerves felt like they were on fire. When they arrived at the courthouse, Alicia's stomach churned upon seeing Carter's sleek sedan parked outside. She took a deep breath and walked inside, refusing to be intimidated. After a brief wait, both parties were called into a modest courtroom with pew-like benches and fluorescent lights. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Regina Martin, observed them with a practiced neutrality. Carter sat at one table with his father, Harold Dawson, as legal counsel. Alicia and Teresa took seats at the opposite table. Harold Dawson began with a spiel about how Carter was deeply concerned about the well-being of his unborn child, claiming Alicia had become emotionally volatile and uncooperative. Alicia's mouth tightened, a new wave of anger stirring in her chest. She watched Carter remain silent, wearing a suit that tried to evoke respectability. Teresa countered by detailing the baby shower incident. She spoke of Alicia's documented hospital visit afterward. Thankfully, Alicia and the baby were unhurt. Teresa also submitted witness statements from a few guests who had seen Carter shove Alicia. Judge Martin's face was impassive, but Alicia sensed the judge's disapproval at hearing about violence against a pregnant woman. She asked direct questions of Carter. "Is it true you engaged in a physical altercation with your wife at another woman's baby shower?" Carter squirmed his carefully rehearsed lines, struggling to come out smoothly. "I wouldn't call it an altercation. Your Honor, I was trying to de-escalate a situation and things got out of hand." Judge Martin pressed further, unimpressed. "De-escalate by pushing your pregnant wife." Carter lowered his gaze. "It was a mistake. I lost my temper. I am deeply remorseful." Just then the courtroom doors swung open. A bailiff tried to stop the commotion, but an older woman rushed in, shouting, "Your Honor, you need to see this." She was holding a car seat. Beside her stood Bianca Reed, pale and anxious, carrying a car seat of her own. Inside each car seat was a newborn, two tiny infants, both fussing softly. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Judge Martin demanded order. "Who are you, ma'am, and why are you interrupting this hearing?" The older woman introduced herself as Angela Reed, Bianca's mother. "These are Bianca's babies, Your Honor. Twin boys, born prematurely last night, and Carter Dawson is listed as the father." She glared at Carter. "We came to find him because he needs to see the consequences of his actions." Alicia felt her stomach drop as she watched Carter's face go pale. He gawked at the infants, clearly not expecting them to be born yet. He stumbled out of his seat, eyes locked on the newborns. The entire courtroom broke into hushed murmurs. Bianca stood there, tears in her eyes, still obviously exhausted from giving birth. "They're premature," she said, addressing the judge. "They need medical support. But my mother insisted on coming here to show Carter." Judge Martin banged her gavel, calling for silence. "Let me get this straight. You are Ms. Bianca Reed, and you have twin boys you claim are fathered by Mr. Dawson, who is simultaneously in court to address custody issues regarding his wife's unborn child." Bianca nodded, eyes downcast. Alicia simply stared, stunned beyond words. She felt like she was trapped in a surreal reality show. Harold Dawson scrambled to do damage control. He stood, smoothing his suit jacket. "Your Honor, we were unaware the children had been born. We believe a paternity test is necessary to Angela Reed cut him off. There's no need for a test." Carter signed an acknowledgement of paternity form when Bianca was admitted. "The hospital has it on record." Carter looked blindsided. He finally found his voice. "They gave me a bunch of papers while Bianca was in labor." "I didn't know." Judge Martin banged her gavel again, the crack echoing. "Enough, Ms. Reed, Ms. Marshall. Both of you are here due to Mr. Dawson. We need to proceed with order." The next hour in the courtroom was a whirlwind. Judge Martin decided that since all parties were present, they would address both the custody petition Carter filed for Alicia's unborn child and this new situation involving Bianca's newborn twins. Bianca, still looking as though she should be in a hospital bed, explained through tears that the twins were born at just 34 weeks. "They're stable, but they need careful monitoring," she said. I wasn't trying to ambush Carter. My mother insisted we come. Angela Reed nodded vigorously, glaring at Carter and Harold Dawson. Carter's father tried to steer the conversation toward a reasonable arrangement, but every time he spoke, Judge Martin's frown deepened. Your client and son has fathered 2 sets of children simultaneously, and there's a documented incident of physical violence against a pregnant partner. There is nothing reasonable about this situation, Mr. Dawson. Teresa Grant took her turn, explaining Alicia's position. My client has no desire to restrict a loving father from being in her child's life. However, given Mr. Dawson's violence and infidelity, we request a protective order and supervised visitation for him, pending a thorough review by Child Protective Services. We also want to ensure Ms. Marshall's medical care is covered and that child support is arranged properly. Judge Martin listened intently, asking pointed questions. Carter tried to defend himself by claiming the push was an accident. He also expressed concern for Bianca and the twins, insisting he would do right by them, though his voice trembled under the judge's scrutiny. Angela Reed stepped up, seething with righteous fury. She described how Carter had made promises to Bianca, swearing he would leave Alicia after the baby was born. Carter's head dropped as Angela's words hung in the sterile air. Alicia, meanwhile, felt an acute sorrow. So he had planned to leave her all along once his mistress had a baby. When it was Bianca's turn to speak, she offered a sobering perspective. "I know what we did was wrong," she said in a trembling voice. "I'm not here to defend our affair. But these twins are innocent. They need a father who won't abandon them at the first sign of difficulty. The stress of everything probably contributed to my premature labor." The entire time, Alicia tried to maintain her composure. She felt a surge of empathy for Bianca's babies. They had no choice in this chaos. She also felt heartbreak for her own unborn child, caught in the middle of a fractured family. All eyes turned to Alicia as Judge Martin inquired about her stance. In a clear, steady voice, Alicia said, "I'm here today for the well-being of my child. I won't deny Carter's paternity if he truly wants to be a father, but I can't expose myself or my baby to violence. I'm requesting the court's protection." A few rows behind them, the gallery was packed. Teresa had brought witnesses from the baby shower to corroborate the assault on Alicia. Their testimonies left no doubt that Carter had indeed pushed her, whether intentionally or not. The last person to speak was Lucy Walters, who had flown in that morning. She delivered a heartfelt statement about Alicia's character, describing her as a loyal, kind person who deserved better than the betrayal she'd received. By the end of the hearing, Carter slumped in his seat, his world spiraling out of control. Bianca stood with tears in her eyes, cradling her premature infant. Another baby squirmed in Angela Reed's arms. Alicia remained stoic, her attorney's hand on her shoulder. Judge Martin cleared her throat, scanning the faces before her. "This is one of the more complicated family law matters I've encountered. Mr. Dawson, your actions have put 2 women and 3 children in jeopardy. First and foremost, the physical safety of Miss Marshall and her unborn child must be assured." She turned to address Alicia directly. "Ms. Marshall, I'm granting you an emergency protective order. Mr. Dawson is to maintain 0 physical contact with you until further review, and any communication regarding your child must go through your attorney." "Do you understand?" Alicia nodded, relief and sorrow mingling in her chest. "Yes, Your Honor." Turning to Carter, the judge continued, "You will undergo anger management counseling, and any visitation with your child once born shall be supervised. Regarding the twin infants Ms. Reed has presented to this court, I want a paternity confirmation, although I acknowledge Mr. Dawson signed an acknowledgement at the hospital. If confirmed, custody and visitation arrangements will similarly require supervision until I am satisfied you are not a danger. Additionally, child support will be determined once paternity is established. Bianca wiped her eyes, nodding weakly. She looked exhausted, but there was relief that at least her baby's care was being considered. Angela Reed shot Carter a final scathing look, as if to say, "We wouldn't be here if not for you." Harold Dawson tried to protest the terms, but Judge Martin cut him off sternly. "Your client is fortunate he wasn't taken into custody for assault on a pregnant woman. The evidence is overwhelming. If you want to fight these rulings, we can schedule a further hearing, but as of now, this is the court's decision." A hushed silence settled on the room as Judge Martin concluded, "We will reconvene in 6 weeks for a follow-up hearing to assess compliance with these orders. Court is adjourned." She banged her gavel, and the tension in the room finally broke. Carter's father began whispering to him, but Carter looked too stunned to respond. Alicia exhaled slowly, feeling an unfamiliar blend of triumph and sadness. There were no real winners here. Just a man who had destroyed the trust of 2 women, fathered 3 children almost simultaneously, and ended up with the scrutiny of the law on him. But Alicia had stood up for herself, and she was determined to continue doing so. Bianca approached Alicia hesitantly, newborn in hand. She whispered, "I'm sorry again. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I do hope we can avoid more drama for the sake of the kids." Alicia looked at the infant who was so small his tiny fist looked no bigger than a plum. She felt a pang in her chest, a maternal empathy for another mother in crisis. But she also remembered the betrayal, the lies. "I hope you and your babies stay safe," she said quietly, then walked away. Lucy followed, placing a comforting arm around Alicia's shoulders. Outside the courthouse, the sun felt too bright, the air too harsh. But for the first time in a long while, Alicia felt a small measure of hope. She had survived the baby shower assault confronted Carter in court and discovered the shocking truth of the twins. Now she had a legal framework to protect herself and her child. In the weeks that followed, Alicia settled into a new normal. She moved out of the downtown apartment she'd shared with Carter, finding a small but cozy place near Lucy's cousin, who lived in LA. She'd changed her phone number to avoid Carter's harassing calls. Financially, she relied on her interior design work and a small emergency fund she'd saved. The protective order allowed her some peace of mind, though she remained vigilant. Carter, meanwhile, started mandatory anger management classes. He tried to contact Alicia through mutual friends, but Teresa Grant shut that down swiftly. The court had made it clear that all communication had to go through legal channels. Bianca's twins were placed in neonatal care for a few extra days before being released. She moved back to San Diego with her mother, away from the rumor mill in Los Angeles. Carter arranged to visit the twins under supervision at a neutral facility, though it was more for show than genuine paternal devotion. The entire spectacle took a toll on his professional life. The law firm, under public scrutiny, put him on indefinite leave. Co-workers whispered about the day he pushed his pregnant wife at his mistress's baby shower. Some voiced sympathy for Alicia, others quietly criticized Bianca. But Carter bore the brunt of the shame. Lucy stayed in LA for another week, helping Alicia get organized. One evening they sat in Alicia's new living room, sipping tea. Lucy asked gently, "How are you feeling about everything?" Alicia rubbed her swollen belly, feeling her baby's gentle kicks. Sad, angry, sometimes relieved. It's a mix of emotions every day. But I'm trying to focus on the baby's future, on creating a safe, loving environment. Lucy nodded. You'll be an amazing mother. Don't forget that. Alicia managed a small smile. Thank you. The baby was due in a few months, and Alicia contemplated whether she wanted Carter in the delivery room. For now, she was content with the protective order. She could revisit that decision closer to her due date. Slowly, Alicia felt herself healing. She leaned on therapy sessions, found solace in supportive friends, and started accepting that her dream of a happy family with Carter was gone. She began to envision a life where she was a single mother, raising a child in a stable home, free from constant betrayal and conflict. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it was one she could embrace with courage. 2 months later, Alicia had just returned from a prenatal checkup when she found Carter sitting in the lobby of her new building. Her heart lurched at the sight of him. He looked worn, dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt. She instinctively placed a hand over her belly. She also recalled the protective order, which explicitly forbade him from coming near her residence. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, stepping back. A pang of fear flared in her chest. "You're violating the order." Carter rose slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "I know. I'm sorry," he said, voice strained. "I just needed to see you, to apologize, to talk. I've been in therapy. I'm getting help for my anger." Alicia's pulse quickened. She glanced around, hoping a neighbor or building security might step in if this went badly. "You should have gone through Teresa. This isn't okay." He nodded, eyes downcast. "I know. I messed up. I'm leaving LA. I wanted to tell you in person." His gaze flicked to her belly. "I also wanted to see if you needed anything before I go. Money, baby supplies, anything." Alicia swallowed hard. She noticed a glint of sincerity in his eyes, different from before. "You haven't changed that fast, Carter. But if you're truly remorseful, you'd respect the court orders. You'd do the right thing financially and legally." He fiddled with the handle of his briefcase. "I'm going to stay with a cousin in San Francisco, do my therapy there, and figure out how to be a better father. I'm not asking for us to get back together. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." Alicia felt tears prick her eyes. She believed he was in genuine pain, but she also remembered that remorse often comes too late. "If you want to be a good father, stay away until you're ready to be safe around me and the baby." She paused, her voice trembling. "And talk to my lawyer about child support." Carter lowered his head, nodded. "I will. Take care of yourself, Alicia." He walked out, shoulders slumped. Alicia felt a rush of mixed emotions. Relief, sadness, hope. She wasn't sure if Carter was truly on a path to redemption, or if this was another performance. Either way, she was resolute that her priority was her child's well-being. Weeks turned into months. Alicia inched closer to her due date, investing her energy into preparing a nursery. Her friend Lucy visited again, helping set up a crib and stock up on diapers. They hung soft yellow curtains by the window, letting in a warm glow. Each baby blanket folded neatly in the dresser reminded Alicia that despite the chaos, there was a precious new life coming soon. Meanwhile, Alicia's attorney confirmed that Carter had begun making monthly payments into an escrow account for child support. He occasionally sent updates on his therapy sessions through Harold Dawson, but Alicia tried to avoid emotional entanglements. She kept her boundaries firm. Bianca occasionally texted Alicia short updates about the twins' health. The babies were growing stronger, hitting milestones, and Alicia found herself somewhat relieved to know they were okay. There was no longer hostility in Bianca's messages, just two women who'd been hurt by the same man, forging a fragile sense of civility. One morning, Alicia woke up with contractions. She called Lucy, who arrived 20 minutes later, loaded Alicia into her car, and sped to the hospital. Despite the rush, Alicia felt an undercurrent of calm. She'd been waiting for this moment, a new life, a new direction, free from the shadows of betrayal. 12 hours later, Alicia gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Clara Rose Marshall. Holding Clara in her arms, Alicia wept tears of pure joy. A wave of protective love surged through her, overshadowing every heartbreak she'd endured. Lucy cut the umbilical cord, tears of pride shining in her eyes. Teresa visited the next day, bringing flowers and a stuffed bunny. "She's perfect," Teresa cooed, admiring the sleeping infant. Alicia smiled, gazing at her daughter with wonder. "Perfect," she whispered. The months after Clara's birth unfolded like a quiet dawn, after a long, stormy night. Alicia nestled into the rhythm of single motherhood, finding solace in the small but extraordinary moments that filled her days. Sleepless nights were softened by Clara's warm breath against her skin, and the gentle curve of her daughter's first smile lit a flame in Alicia's soul that could never be extinguished. She paused her larger interior design contracts and focused on small freelance gigs that allowed her to work from home. With Lucy's help, before she returned to Ohio, Alicia had turned her small apartment into a haven, soft pastel tones, cushioned corners, and the faint scent of lavender lingering in the air. It wasn't the life she had once imagined, but it was a life she now embraced fully. Carter remained in San Francisco, honoring the boundaries outlined in the court's orders. He sent occasional letters, some apologetic, others reflective. Alicia read them sometimes aloud during therapy sessions, but rarely responded. The emotions they stirred were complicated. He had shattered her world, but he was still Clara's father. And Alicia had no intention of hiding that from her daughter, only shielding her from harm. After consulting with Teresa and her therapist, Alicia agreed that when Clara was older, and if Carter had shown consistency in his therapy and personal growth, a supervised visit could be considered. But Alicia made one thing clear: my daughter's safety and well-being come before anything else. Bianca, now living quietly in San Diego with her mother, and the twins resumed her paralegal studies online. She messaged Alicia a few times, brief updates, soft-toned, and full of regret. The anger between them had ebbed, replaced by a cautious truce. They both bore the scars of Carter's betrayal, but they also shared a reluctant bond as mothers navigating new fractured realities. The twins were reported to be thriving, chubby, healthy, and alert. Alicia sent a congratulatory message when they turned 6 months. Bianca replied with a photo, two gummy smiles staring back at the camera. Alicia stared at it for a long time, her emotions a blend of sadness, closure, and strange peace. Lucy had eventually returned to Ohio, but the daily calls never stopped. She became Alicia's lifeline from afar, sending silly memes, voice messages filled with encouragement and care packages of herbal teas and onesies. "You're doing incredible," Lucy often said. "You've done more than survive. You've grown." One evening, Alicia stood by the window. Clara nestled against her chest. The city outside pulsed with life, but inside there was stillness, peace. She watched the last traces of a golden sunset slip beneath the rooftops. her thoughts drifting back to the day she had walked into Bianca's baby shower. The humiliation, the anger, the violence, it had once defined her story, but not anymore. Now it was Clara's tiny hands that guided her forward. Every giggle, every midnight feeding, every milestone was a reminder of how far Alicia had come. She no longer felt broken. She felt rebuilt, stitched back together with resilience, clarity, and love. Occasionally she would glance at the unopened letters Carter continued to send, stored in a shoebox beneath her bed. Maybe one day Clara would read them. Maybe one day there would be understanding. But not yet. As the weeks rolled into seasons, Alicia found joy in the unexpected, a new client who appreciated her minimalist touch. A book club formed by local mums. Clara's first word. Mama spoken with such unfiltered joy, it brought Alicia to her knees in tears. Her heart healed in slow, steady beats, soothed by every little proof that life could bloom from brokenness. On Clara's first birthday, Alicia hosted a small gathering in a sunlit park. Balloons, swaying gently in the breeze. Cupcakes in pastel shades after of new friends who had become family. Lucy flew in. Bianca sent a quiet birthday message. Carter did not attend. He wasn't ready, and Alicia didn't feel guilty about that anymore. She had learned something invaluable. Closure doesn't always come in the form of reconciliation. Sometimes it's choosing yourself, choosing peace, choosing to look ahead instead of behind. As Alicia laid Clara down that night, the baby's tiny fingers clutched her mother's shirt. Alicia kissed her forehead, whispering a vow only they would ever hear. You'll never have to wonder if you're loved. The scars of betrayal remained, yes, but they were no longer open wounds. They were part of the landscape of a life rebuilt with strength. And in the heart of that landscape, Alicia had carved out a new beginning. One full of promise and anchored by the most important truth she had ever known. She was enough. And Clara, her beautiful daughter, would grow up in a home filled not with drama or pain, but with unwavering, unconditional love. Sometimes life's harshest twists become the stepping stones to newfound strength. Alicia's journey reminds us that even the most devastating betrayal cannot extinguish the power of hope. She faced the humiliation of discovering her husband's double life, survived the horrifying moment he pushed her during a baby shower, and courageously stood up in court when her world was crumbling. Yet through it all, she held fast to her dreams of becoming a loving parent, and she turned those dreams into a reality. Clara was born into adversity, but surrounded by a mother's unwavering devotion. The court battled the broken trust, the complicated webs of relationships, all gave Alicia the clarity she needed to rebuild. And rebuild she did. If you found Alicia's journey inspiring, please like this video, share it with anyone who needs to hear a message of resilience, and subscribe for more powerful stories that prove hope can triumph over heartbreak.